Vision is our most dominant sense, writes John Medina, author of the best-selling book Brain Rules. The molecular biologist with a passion for the mind's ability to react and process information tells us incorporating pictures into our communication efforts helps our audience grasp content more effectively. Man's earliest communications weren't written reports or stories, but cave paintings, going back possibly 40,000 years ago. The written word, on the other hand, has only been around for about 5,000 years. Although the written and oral words are our primary communication tools in the 21st century, our minds are still wired for visual communication. Our brains dedicate over half of their available energy to processing visual stimuli. Shouldn't we take better advantage of that? Wake up to the promise of what visuals can do to grab your audience's attention, keep them focused, and help them see your point from a different perspective. Back in the day, I'm talking the 1980s, before digital communication took off like a rocket, we were more limited in how we could present information to our audiences. Since then, the computer, fueled by the internet, has given us so many new ways to develop compelling communication works. Multimedia gives communicators new options and new opportunities. For good examples of what multimedia can do, check out feature stories on the websites of the world's leading newspapers. The New York Times has won countless awards for its pioneering digital platforms. But my favorite Digital Times creation was Snowfall, an evocative narrative about skiers caught in a tragic avalanche and the science that explained it all. More than a dozen people were enlisted to create the 50 multimedia elements used to tell the 16,000-word story that earned the Times a Pulitzer Prize. This digital extravaganza included an animated visualization of the avalanche's path in real time, a video clip of the avalanche happening shot from one of the skiers' helmet cams, an animation demonstrating how a skier's life-saving airbag worked, an actual 911 recording where you can hear the real-time emotion of survivors. The abundance of multimedia tools provided readers with a deeper appreciation of the tragedy and better educated them about the power of avalanches. The animations, videos, voice recordings, infographics, etc. were not gratuitous add-ons. They enabled the person experiencing the digital story to feel more connected to what happened. These features not only explained the science of avalanches, but also added a human element that could not be achieved by text alone. In the relatively short time we've been embracing digital-driven multimedia, we've produced all sorts of unique creations. Some of them great, transcending limits imposed on us by more staid media, but others very disappointing. Many communicators use and misuse multimedia for its gee whiz factor, missing the point of what these tools can and should deliver. With visual communication, as with all communication efforts discussed in this course, it comes down to using graphics and other tools with a sense of purpose. Multimedia can arouse emotion in your audience. That's a good thing if it boosts their cognitive level of engagement. But too many pictures, too many bells and whistles can alter your audience's ability to make sense of your subject. Avoid what one adult learning expert calls pumpkin graphics, which is when you stick the image of a jack-o'-lantern into your presentation just because it happens to be late in the month of October. That pumpkin is not helping your audience learn something new. It's only a distraction. Beautifying a communication effort doesn't necessarily make it a better piece of communication. As always, it comes down to the quality of the content and its relevance to the audience. Use visual communication to add meaning to your effort, not to distract. We've seen evidence of the use of infographics throughout history, but they've really enjoyed a resurgence as a communication tool when in 1981 the newspaper USA Today was established. An infographic is a visual image such as a chart or diagram used to represent information or data. Some infographics simply communicate information, kind of like a newspaper article, but with more visual appeal. Others are built on data, relying on numbers from research, like opinion polls or scientific findings. Designers transform the data and turn it into images that bring deeper meaning to the viewer. This is called data visualization. Let's take a look at an infographic created by design guru John Grimwade. You may have seen John's work among the pages of Condé Nast Traveler magazine. This infographic, The New Sky, commemorates 100 years since the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk. Grimwade pays tribute to the anniversary by telling us a visual story about air travel today. This piece is a roundup of passenger aircraft developments, like new long-distance routes and aircraft design. In the upper right-hand corner, you see a graphic of the 555 passenger capacity Airbus A380 compared to the tiny 1903 Wright Flyer. These two planes and all the aircraft in this graphic are to scale. This kind of comparison offers us a deeper understanding of the difference between the two aircraft. It's one thing for a journalist to describe the small size of the Wright Flyer compared to the A380, but it's so much more effective for the reader to see a drawing done to scale. This visual understanding adds greatly to the learning experience in a way words cannot. Grimwade often talks about the importance of precisely crafted text. Not entirely what you'd expect from a graphic designer, but John realizes that his infographics won't be effective if design is his only concern. The two-paragraph introduction on the left side of the graphic is crucial to help give the reader an understanding of what is going on in a fairly complex display. Since the design is packed with so much data, Grimwade had to figure out how to lay everything out to reduce the amount of chaos and let the information speak for itself. In developing the storyline, John demonstrates that he has journalistic skills. But with managing a complicated layout, he really proves to us that he is a well-trained graphic designer. Grimwade also adds a few what he calls info gems into his graphics. He believes these little pockets of data add interest to the overall design. And besides, he just finds them fun. John tells us an interesting story about the state of passenger air travel. Sure, a journalist could have written a 1,000-word article covering a lot of the same information, but the visual image captivates its audience and draws many more eyeballs than a block of text would have done. While this design is visual communication, it is very much telling us a story, and that's what smart infographics do. Infographics work best in newspapers, magazines, reports, and online. They often become less impactful in presentations. This is because infographics can be packed with data as well as a variety of other different graphics. This is difficult to see on a screen when using PowerPoint, Keynote, or other presentation tools. Also in a presentation, you should be the storyteller in charge. Don't let your graphics take over. I commissioned an infographic for the launch of my book. On launch day, it was offered to news outlets around the world. If you saw it in your local paper or online, along with a brief description, it would have made perfect sense as a standalone piece. Put this up on screen, however, in a meeting room, and it's difficult to read the features of being a super communicator. Audiences would have to squint their eyes and still not be able to read it. When I used this infographic while giving presentations, I had to modify it to make sure it was a powerful image and was not dragging down the audience by making them read tiny text. Note in this second PowerPoint-friendly version, I've stripped out all the text boxes and adjusted the graphics dimensions. Rather than have the audience read tiny words on a screen, I told them in person about the significance behind the main points. Asking audiences to read a complicated infographic in a presentation is asking too much. Providing a smart infographic as a leave-behind, however, is a much better idea. An appealing graphic that summarizes your presentation's high points is a great tool to help them remember your presentation long after it's over. How do you go about creating infographics? The answer to that question can vary depending on your skills, your team skills, and your budget. The job of the super communicator isn't necessarily to create an infographic himself from top to bottom. Although I'm the son of a graphic designer, I am terrible at creating graphics. Instead, I work with designers to bring my vision to life. The chief communicator, that would be me, serves as the editor-in-chief of the project, primarily responsible for making sure the graphics tell a compelling and accurate story. You may work with a truly gifted graphic designer who is capable of making everything she touches beautiful, or you may even be one. But don't confuse visualization with art. Sure, you want your infographic to be appealing, but it has to serve a practical purpose first. Most designers are taught to make things look good, but are not necessarily schooled on storytelling, information delivery, and data integrity. That is the function of a journalist or a communications pro. In most cases, it is essential to work as a team with your designer, assuring your end product is a relevant communication tool that just happens to look good. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can learn how to create compelling infographics with some work and some discipline. Remember, infographic creators are part journalist, part designer, and sometimes part data analyst. In addition to mastering design software, here are some pointers on how to turn those graphics into meaningful communication tools. Read these books: A Functional Art by Alberto Cairo, Show Me the Numbers by Stephen Few, and White Space is Not Your Enemy by Kim Golumbisky and Rebecca Hagan. Start reading graphics critically. Go online and spend some time analyzing infographics from reliable news sources. Are they pretty images, or do they tell a story? As you advance, you'll begin to see the difference between effective and ineffective infographics. Jump in. As you learn more about information design, start producing graphics of your own. Take stories from the media that are filled with data and see if you can create an infographic that tells the story visually. There are a growing number of designers who can do it all, offering turnkey infographic solutions to those willing to pay. But critically review their portfolios before hiring. Your feedback to them is critical to assure an effective end product. No matter what media you're working in, there are a few guidelines to consider when producing visual communications. Keep visuals clean and simple. Keep content uncluttered. Eliminate any visuals that don't add to your communication effort. Simplicity and clean aesthetics are best. Be extra careful when working with graphics. Too many graphics today, even those from so-called reliable sources, misinterpret data. In an effort to make their graphics look good or tell a more compelling story, data gets manipulated. Graphics that show misleading information are unacceptable if you want to be credible. You can't force visualization. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of data visualization, but there are limits to what you should expect your visualizations to do. Most data sets are actually boring and don't tell a great story on their own. Don't force data to tell a full story. People like color. No surprise here. Audiences respond favorably when there's a splash of color, putting them in a better learning frame of mind. But don't overdo a good thing. Animate when appropriate. Animation could be a great way to explain complicated topics. And online you can hire animators to build custom-made clips for you for far less than you might expect.